Hey, good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, December 24th, Christmas Eve. And you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show. My name is Beth Lyons. With me today, I have Jyunmi Hatcher and Andy Halliday. Say hey to the people, everybody.
Yo,
Hey!
yo.
Okay, so today what we're talking about is identifying what are the blocks that are in the way of truly outsourcing tasks and sections of your job or even your whole job to AI. Because as we see when study after study comes out, we see that a lot of people are aware of it. Most people have used the ChatGPT once or twice, right? But we often hear, well, I don't really get it. I can do it faster on my own, so I don't really want to do this. Or like you can tell that it's not really writing. You can tell that it's AI, right? It says, hello, let's dive deep. And as we delve, and everybody goes, no, that's totally AI. We know that. But what we want to talk about today is like what are the obstacles getting in your way and how can you shift those? So that's our thoughts today. We know that there are concerns about job replacement. We know that there are concerns about data security or just not knowing where to start. And we're hoping to ease that path for you today. And thanks. Does anybody have a place they want to start, or would you like me to?
I
You
can,
know,
I can
yeah,
jump
I'm
in.
going to toss to Andy. Thanks,
Okay,
Andy.
great. So you're not alone if you're not employing and applying AI to your regular daily efforts. Uh, uh, I just read recently, and I'm sorry I don't have the citation for it. Perplexity would, but a recent survey showed that only 6% of businesses, right, have active and productive, like returning value applications of AI underway. Now, which is really quite amazing. It's such a low single digit percentage. And I think there's lots of evidence that while many people have chatted with AI before, actually using it in a productive fashion, whether in your own household management, personal finances or whatever, uh, it's probably also in single digits that people have actually applied AI, and it's a sad thing because the capabilities of AIs have really rapidly advanced to the point where they're incredibly sophisticated in their ability to support you in multiple ways. Uh, and the word multimodal comes to mind. It's not just chatting with AI anymore, but there's ways that you can stream together different functions that the AI can perform into a sequence of things that result in something that's visual and audible. And so there's a lot of potential there that's unmet by the application by individuals and by businesses. So let's talk about a few of the things that can contribute to that. Well, one of them is just the skills gap that comes about because it's not being practiced routinely. It does take practice, and the things that we practiced 2 years ago, when the first frontier models became available and we were able to prompt them, the prompting skills that we had back then, which were text only, those have kind of drifted a little bit. We have this idea of prompt drift, which is a slightly different thing. It means that once you've set a prompt into place in a routine application, sometimes the model changes and or just variations in the inference can result in that prompt not performing reliably. And reliability is one of the things that becomes an obstacle there for as well. Hey, I spent a lot of time setting up this custom GPT and now it's just kind of broken. It doesn't really work anymore. So there are things that you have to maintain. What does that mean? You've got to practice this routinely. So the skill gap that comes from this lack of routine practice with I think is one of the things that prevents people from employing it in increasingly effective ways because of the increasing capabilities of the model. All right. So the next thing is integrating it with the tools and data that you need in order to get to some level of productivity. So let's imagine you're a professional in a company and you're going to use it for your own work product. Well, I think a significant number of people in that role inside companies are using AI on a chat basis, right? So, oh, I have a question and I'm going to ask for a little guidance from an AI before I get busy doing the work myself. And so that's kind of a low level implementation of what AI is capable of doing. And so a lot of people are doing that, but that falls short of what I would consider application viability using AI and the tool sets that are now available. So,
Andy, I just
yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
jump in because I think you're totally right. I think that there is a missing step that you've just sort of shined the flashlight on, which is you need to be thinking about when you want to use AI before you're in the thing that you would use AI for. Because at least for me, it's a different headspace, right? It's a strategic headspace as opposed to an actual, like, I'm there and I need to be being creative, or I'm there and I know that there's just this one section of the process, but I can't come up with like, that's too many like braiding your hair in the mirror kind of thing. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, Andy.
Well, I do. I go like this and I
There
braid
we
this
go.
little hair. Yeah.
But it is helpful to like carve out a little bit of time so that you can identify the things that you want to use AI for before you're actually in it. Thanks.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that you need to identify is what data can I bring to the AI to allow it to have access to what I can kind of in my own workspace easily access. And there's a bridge that has to be crossed there that's only very recently been made much easier by the expansion of context windows and the availability within some of the workspaces out there of a projects kind of place, a space in which you can put a lot of the data that you routinely use and just basically upload documents and store them there in that project space. And then the AI has access to them as well. So, that's one of the key steps is you got to give it information. And if you're just going to sit down and do a chat with the AI, you can upload a file, but uploading multiple files seems to be like I'm going to end up exhausting myself having to do that over and over every time I start a new chat. So now there's project spaces where you can park these documents in a certain context or workflow that you intend. And that has made that much easier. But that leads me to another very important point, which is things have been changing so fast that if you're not routinely paying attention to what's available now in the tool set that's out there, tool sets, because you have to evaluate them across multiple providers, then you don't even know that there's this new capability that will make it much easier than it was even 3 months ago. So those new advancements, especially in the usability by the availability of tools and better user interfaces for access to LLMs and other tools, like search, for example, is not an LLM, but search is now tightly integrated into almost every of the major LLMs. You can get real-time web search as part of the process, which makes it less important that you deliver its bespoke personal data or your own company's data, because you can just do hey Ellen, go out there and just scour the internet for anything that's relevant to this, and it's going to come back with up to the minute literally results that are part of the context that it's going to use to solve whatever mission or task that you're applying it to.
Mm-hmm. Jyunmi, I'm wondering if you have, are there obstacles for you, or like where are you using AI, or what can you identify? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the easiest or the earliest entry point for me is the low hanging fruit, right? Whatever my daily tasks were, can just identifying, is this something I'm doing more than once or twice? And is it something I can get a response that will save me time, right? It's all about saving time for me. And so a lot of the uses that I've applied AI is in automations. So it's, whether it is coming up with transcripts or coming up with summaries or changing that into usable show ideas, or just aggregating things. These are all that low hanging fruit instances, because this is not necessarily this is not necessarily something that only AI can do. And I think that's the big entry. The mind shift is, it's not when you're getting into using AI in your daily life, you don't have to think about it as, oh, I have this new tool and I have to come up with the use case for it. Just take what you're doing now and see where it can save you time. And then once you see the time savings just from those little things, then it gets the gears going. It's like, oh, I can do it this way. Oh, I don't have to do this way anymore. I did this whole process of jumping through 3 or 4 different applications, or spent hours doing this entire process to come up with this end result. But now I can get the end result by shortcutting it,
Right.
and I think that time saving is probably the number one most valuable thing to me, beyond getting to try the new capabilities and things like that. So that's where I would say a good entry point is to just analyze what you have, and then see what can be replaced piece by
Right.
piece. Yeah.
Right.
Related to that point is that many businesses have accomplished low-level automations of routine processes that employ a large language model. And you can do that within Zapier, a tool that within companies, people had already been using to automate sort of data transport issues and API integrations internally, without having to ask the IT department to engage engineers to establish a new API integration. Well, Zapier and other tools make that much easier, and it's all about automation, so that moving data from one place to another doesn't have to be done by a human individual anymore. It's done by an automated routine. So that's an entry point. But if you do that with a mission, an objective of just reducing the man hours that are required to pursue your business processes, you're missing the big boat. The big boat is that very recently, the reasoning capabilities and those context window expansions have made it possible for very advanced models to reason across very large data sets and do something that's much more strategic for you than just automating simple workflows. And I'm going to go all the way up to and including, you want a business strategy review for your company. You've never even dreamed of hiring one of the major strategy consulting firms to do that. Well, if you just do the heavy lifting of making available with a third party tool the corporate or business information that you can collect, and you describe that, and you use prompt engineering tools that make it so that you don't even have to be able to ask the AI how to do this strategic review. You can just say, this is what I want. I want a strategic review of my business, and I want to know if I'm on the right track, whatever. These advanced models will do very sophisticated business analysis of your position in the market, the market itself, the industry. It can go out there and scour this using web search. And there's plenty of people that you don't have time to read who have already done a lot of this and published this kind of research. But now AI can aggregate that for you and then reason on that information and give you specific direction. And this is way beyond just automating work, that,
Right.
is the stuff you don't want to do. This is really what you want to engage with. And now you have an assistant. You have the capability of adding an assistant that's intelligent to talk to and to present to you all the alternatives and reason through which ones are probably the ones that you should employ as strategic initiatives for 2025. That's what AI can do for you today that we didn't imagine doing until really the advent of models like O1,
Right.
which is now is soon to be superseded in terms of its reasoning capabilities by O3 in a dramatic way. So you really need to start to prepare for thinking strategically with an AI assistant.
Right. And so I agree. And I just want to clarify. So the models, if we're talking about ChatGPT, we're talking about like your workhorse model, which is 4.0. We're talking about the reasoning, the mini level or the reduced fat level of the next reasoning model, which is O1 mini. You get 50 interactions with O1 mini a day. And then the higher level, which is what I refer to as full fat or O1 regular, then you get 50 of those in a week, right? So there is some strategy to be employed in this context, but if you like, you can use O1 mini to set up the prompt that you're going to use for O1 regular. You can use 4.0 to go back and forth to try to get some phrasing that will actually communicate what you want to get out from the models. And I love that, Andy. If we're not just looking at OpenAI and ChatGPT, then we're talking about Gemini 2.0 thinking. And Gemini, I think it's Gemini 2.0 Flash thinking. I think the thinking model is part of their Flash, and Flash experimental, both of which are available in the AI Studio at Google. It's aistudio.google.com, I think. And I want to get to some of the questions or the frustrations that are being shared in the chat. So Gwen says, I'm frustrated by the GPTs that I've created. I don't know. I can't pull it on the screen. I attached a marketing plan in the custom instructions, but it doesn't reference it when it's answering me. This is a common problem that people have, Gwen. I'm so glad you brought it up. And from my teacher's vantage point, if your AI is not doing what you ask, break it down into steps and see where the problem is. Like that may be a series of GPTs in terms of the marketing plan. It may also be something that you want to make sure that you're using. Like that might not be a perfect GPT case. You might want to use that as an upload and then have a conversation with O1 Mini or something. And I'm trying to remember, I think O1 Mini allows uploads of files. If not, Flash over on Google's site definitely does. And Anthropic Cloud does not have a thinking model or the kind of strategic things that we're talking about, but it's good. Like I was using it for strategy before. And so I would say that. Also, Eric says, I've used it mainly to help me scrape data for websites or build little equations. Yes, I have lost the language of Excel and Sheets because I don't need it, right? Same way that like I know how to get to most places in the city, but I no longer hold myself to knowing that without my GPS on my phone. Yeah. I think they are wonderful for building your equations. And actually, Google Sheets Gemini, we'd sort of joke that the AIs that are in these productivity tools are not right the best, but Gemini in Sheets is actually really good at taking at you saying, I want these two cells to be attached in a string, and then I want you to add this or whatever the thing is that you're going to want it to do. It's really good at natural language to equation. So one of the other things that that I think is helpful, and I've heard a couple of businesses start to talk about this, is to set aside a time for internal hackathon, right? So you're just going to, and if you work alone, you're still a business, right? Set aside for your internal hackathon and start making notes about the things that you might want to create or you might want to investigate during that hackathon. And this gets to the point that Andy was making, which is that even if you're a heavy user, stuff is changing so often that you're still going to want to put aside a little bit of time to go and investigate it. We on the show are a little shortcutting it in a way, but I still need to put aside the time because my time is before the show happens and then a little bit after the show happens, but then we have a show tomorrow. Like there are definite things I want to go back and implement. Are you guys facing the same kind of thing, Jyunmi?
That's essentially what my weekends are for. Yeah, the show occupies a lot of the day to day, so I have to accumulate my list of, oh, I need to check that out. Oh, I need to try this out, and so a lot of the testing and stuff like that definitely happens on the weekends. But it is a good point to set aside that time, because you will realize that you have less than you think you do. And so having pre-scheduled time to just hack away at use cases or new tools or anything like that, that's probably better for you. It's just like when it comes to continuing education, kind of skill workshops and things like that. You got to set aside enough time throughout the year to just keep those skills up. And I think AI use for whatever your work is, whatever your field is, just remember that AI is an applied tool. So unless you are in AI development, it's applying the tool to your use case or your work or your business, and things like that. Perfectly fine to try out and have fun with, but it's another tool for your tool set, right? So I agree. You do need to have that set aside time just so that you can try and figure out. And I'm a big fan of work back schedules. So if there's a goal or a product or an output that you're, or a result that you're trying to accomplish, figure out when you need to have that accomplished and create a work back schedule to see how much time you'll need to spend on it. And that usually, takes care of it for me.
And Eric has given us a nice little shorthand in the chat. His favorite way to identify what to automate is to ask himself, what sucks? And in this holiday season, let's give ourselves the gift of taking away some of what sucks, right? Like maybe that's the best gift you can have. Andy, what were you thinking?
Well, I was just going to remark that the idea of hackathons or work sessions, workshops inside a collaborating work group is really important, because there's going to be a range of skills and experience in AI, even within a small group, right? Even among us on the show, right? There are individuals among us who have much more advanced capabilities with specific tools and so on. I wouldn't pretend to be able to catch up with that. So I have the benefit of being able to watch as they speak about and or employ these tools and say, okay, I see that that's available, and maybe even incorporate some of that into my own work and my own sort of familiar environments. But it's forced practice, and it's a knowledge exchange. And I don't know how many companies are actually doing that. Setting aside just a 1 hour block, every other week or so would be much better than never, right? But if it was once a week and it's available and people can step in and, you've got a big, projection screen there, or, very large monitor, and, somebody shares their screen and says, well, here's what I'm working on right now. Let me show you what I'm doing with this. That also provides a motivation, because you're having to have something in your pocket to show. Now, you don't make it a requirement that everybody do a demonstration of what they're working on, although a hackathon is exactly that, right? In a hackathon, there's an expectation that you're going to show what the work product was of what you were working on in the hackathon. And this is short of programming, but it is in effect the newest form of programming in natural language. And so you're using machines in some kind of way that you want to demonstrate to other people, and you're going to learn in that process. So I love this forced practice idea. And I wish I had more time on my calendar to do that sort of thing.
It is really important, and it may, like, we do a little bit of that as the Daily AI Show, and I think in 2025 we're going to look to do a little bit more of that. One of the examples from our process is something that Jyunmi really pushed for, and I'll give an example of what's in the way versus what it can become. So like, again, we're busy, we do shows every day, so good enough is an obstacle sometimes, right? Like, fine, it works. Yes, I have to go and find that custom GPT in order to get this piece of what I'm looking for, and then this other piece I have built in the console of Anthropic, and then this other piece I have built as a series of conversations with Perplexity. That is a functional system. It is not an optimal system, but it is one that I have been using for a pretty long time. And Jyunmi kept saying, I think we can streamline this. I just need the prompt that you're using. I just need to know your process. And then Gwen, what Jyunmi used is respell, so that then you could automate the chaining of the prompts and use the results from one prompt into the next. You can do this manually in custom GPTs, where you start a conversation, you can call another custom GPT that has the next set of information into that conversation. So it uses that conversation as context, and now you're chatting with Gwen's GPT number 2. But when you set it up in Respell, you can see each piece and you can test each piece, and it's actually really, really helpful. And I'm not going to tell you how many times Jyunmi had to ask me for that, but he is very good at wearing you down with just persistent questioning based on what we really all want.
On the subject of practice, I'm going to just share an anecdote about my development of skill in the area of prompting that goes all the way back to 2023. And that was, suddenly, in the sort of social exchanges that we were a part of, we started, all of us on the AI Daily AI Show, in the AI Exchange, which was a very early community of AI aficionados. No technical, no prior technical skills required. And you could, meet other people and see in the Slack system that they set up for us, you could see what other people were working on and asking about. But then people started doing this 30 days of prompting or 30 days of automations. And this is all the way back, a long time ago. And so I joined in this group of, I think at the outset, there might have been 20 or 30 people who were going to do 30 days, every single day, publish another prompt to LinkedIn that was a demonstration of some, thing. So that's forcing you in a 30-day period to think about and generate a prompt, share that prompt, and share the output and the utility of that output of that prompt. And this goes way back, and things have changed in prompting now. So it's much easier to prompt than it was back then. structured prompting was much more essential back then, and the sophistication of AI today is such that you don't have to necessarily understand all of the technicalities and formatting of those prompts. But that was probably the biggest advance of my understanding of working with LLMs, was 30 days continuous. And by the end of the 30 days, by the way, the 20 or 30 people who were publishing daily in the first 3 days had dropped to maybe 5. There were 5 of us at the end of that who were publishing to LinkedIn.
And you were 2 of the 5, aren't you? Jyunmi did all 30 and Andy did all 30.
Yeah.
So the behind the scenes is that this was an idea that the AI Exchange fellows came up with, and they let us run. So Brian and I are part of the people who set it up, but we didn't make it to the 30. I think I definitely didn't make it to the 30. But yeah, just those sorts of things are really helpful. And you could just do 7 straight days, or this is our week of prompting, right? 30 is delightful and ambitious, and it can be really helpful to just start in that habit and that process. Yeah, Gwen says she needs a Jyunmi on her case. So yeah, perhaps we'll be renting Jyunmi out for like we're a digital Jyunmi. We'll create an automation of Jyunmi. Like, what do you need Jyunmi to politely but emphatically continue to ask you because you have not completed it?
That'll be my AI avatar. Yeah.
Another thing that's changed in the world of the models that we can use today, and that is instruction tuning. Mm-hmm. So back in the day, 2 years ago, the
last summer.
Yeah, right. The models, there were models that had to be labeled instruct. So you know, open source models and also the frontier models would have a version that had the word instruct in them, which meant that it had been trained to follow instructions. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, the earlier versions of it, you'd have to prompt everything in there, and you couldn't actually provide a chain of thought or chain of steps kind of instruction to it and get a reliable outcome. But that's gone. Now you can give it a very clear set of instructions about a sequence of steps that you wanted to take. And I used an example of that when we were talking about last week on the projects, the ChatGPT projects release. So a brand new place, but where I was able to put in data in the knowledge documents that are in that project, and then give it a set of instructions that would ask it to go through, a series of steps, taking information, specific information from one document, and then applying it to and using the instructions in another document, and then do that recursively until it came to a result. That you couldn't ask an LLM to do that in the old days, but now they're much more sophisticated, and their pre-training has included a deep library of how to follow instructions.
Mm-hmm. We've done a couple shows, like maybe literally 2 shows on using Anthropic's console to help give you like the first draft of the prompt, right? Because it can do that for free, and you can say what you want the AI to do, and it will give you a first draft of a prompt within their kind of formatting. They use XML tags, which are words inside greater than and less than symbols, and then with a slash in front of it. Yeah, they use XML tags. If you look that up, you will find it. But it's just a way of structuring the information that you're giving in the prompt, right? So if you have a whole bunch of instructions, you can put that in an XML tag sequence and then have sub instructions that also form their individual containers. And again, that was a little difficult to try if you're not somebody who coded HTML by hand at some point. And yeah, raise your hand if you did that insanely for a little while. But if you're not someone who has that experience or like old bulletin board experience, this may be a little unusual to get the hang of. But the console, Anthropic's console prompt generator will actually do it for you, and then you can start to learn based on what's working. And I find that those prompts do work for me in Gemini and Perplexity. Perplexity probably because the model that I'm choosing to use is Claude. So that may not be a big surprise now that I'm saying it out loud. But Gemini also does tend to respond to those. Yay. Jyunmi, I don't know if you've seen, like, there's a whole like prototype happening.
Apparently, there's like 6 different versions of me being created right now. We've got the rabbit edition. We've got the digital twin or Jyunmi GPT. I believe Jen was saying to make me into a Pokemon or a Tamagotchi. Yeah. Hey, more Jyunmi, more. It's all good, right? Yeah, I'll get on. I can get on 1 or 2 of those, but hook me up with a hardware person for the Tamagotchi or for the Pokemon thing. That'd be awesome. And I love our viewers in our chat. They are some of the most fun people. But one of the things that I wanted to touch upon before before we close out for the day is the overall question of why haven't you gone into AI yet? And I wanted to address that a little bit. I think with anything that's rapidly changing, just change in general or rapid change in specifically, it's hard to know where to jump into, right? But this is also one of the easiest tools to jump in anywhere, right? The barrier is so low now that particularly with generative AI, and we're talking about like chat GPTs and things like that, it's so the barrier is so low, you really can just start with really anything. You don't need to know how to do anything before you get started, right? And just through the use and the continued application, you're going to get results. You're going to build upon those skills. It'd be great if you had some instructions beforehand. It'd be great if you had a workshop or thing that you could jump into, but you don't need to. And that's the one thing that I wanted to emphasize is you can literally start from nothing and build upon just that tiny, little kernel. Just go into Chat GPT and just say hello world, and that'll, you could just jump up from there and you'll get a response, and then you can keep asking questions. You can ask it to ask you questions, and that kind of conversational experience is can really help you take from a point of 0, and you can build upon until you're 0 to hero. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure that we said clearly is you don't need to know anything. You take a very little bit of time out of your day. Just do it for 5 minutes when you first start. And then what I find is the more questions I start asking, it doesn't even have to be to solve a problem, but just the more questions I start asking leads me to build upon that. And then your idea and your creativity starts to get going, the gears start to get going. And that's when you're like, oh, can you do this? And it's usually, yes, I can. Most of the time, that's a lot better now. So where it's actually can, but but taking that toward that kind of point of view on it, I think will really help anyone who has any apprehension of getting started. And
I have
maybe,
a challenge for our listeners. Because
hey, there we go.
I think I think you're preaching to the choir to a large degree. Anybody among you who is watching the Daily AI Show, even intermittently, you're doing one of the key steps, which is to be absorbing information that's about what's possible and what's happening right now in the tools that are available. Now I want you to do this. Here's your homework assignment, Christmas Eve. You don't have to do it today. Just do it over the holiday. I want you to use an AI, could be any one of the multimodal AIs, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. I want you to find a way, you might have to do a little research to do it, but find a way to take one of our old episodes and give it to the LLM and have it create a transcript and then summarize the concepts that were presented in that show. And you're just going to do it for one time. You're not building an automation to do this. You're just going to give it. And I'll give you a clue. There are models out there where you can just give it the YouTube URL and it will do all this for you. But think about all of the content that's been developed here and maybe an episode that you missed. Now just go find that episode on YouTube, get the URL for that, and then go to an LLM and have it inform you about what is in that content, in that whole 40-minute show that we did, and summarize it with lots of terms. Like I laughed when I saw Jude in the chat here earlier say, my prompts always include explain as if to a fourth grader, which is really short-changing his intellectual skills, I'll assure you. But anyway, that's your challenge. Go get one of our old episodes and produce a summary. Have AI produce a summary for you that makes it so that you don't have to sit there for 40 minutes and listen to it.
Nice. And we're also gonna use the clue from earlier. If there is something that you are doing for productivity or work or personal development, and you think the thought, wow, this sucks, that might be a clue to, hey, can I add AI to this? So thank you very much. So we hope that your day is lovely and that your holidays unfold as gently as you wish. We are here tomorrow. It's going to be a special news show. So we're going to talk about good news, things that AI is doing that is really good, that those kinds of things tend to be under the radar. So if you are up earlier than anyone else, or whatever your day is like tomorrow, you want to come and hang with us for a little bit, we will be here on Christmas morning, and we'll be here for the rest of the week. So thank you so much. I hope your day is great. Thanks, everybody.
Aloha.